Welcome to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, Bills post-game show. I'm Ryan Thomas. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. What a game. What a show this is going to be. I talked about it earlier this morning in regards to hoping that I could hop on this show and not have to dive into a game that was frustrating, not have to dive into a game that was a bad one. This was one of the best Bills games in recent memory. This was a Bills game that was much needed for the Buffalo Bills fan base, and this was a Bills game that I think was massive for this team and in particular this team's future. Hopping on the mic tonight, I got to tell you, this is one of the most exciting times I've ever had to hop behind the mic and provide you with my post-game recap, diving into what allowed this victory to happen, what created this victory to happen for the Buffalo Bills. What did they get done right? What were they able to do that allowed them to get this victory? For the first time since 1993, folks, the Buffalo Bills are 7-3. I want to remind you guys to fire comments away on the comment section below, whether you're tuning in on Facebook or YouTube. As well on the audio side of things, you will be able to listen to this podcast on the audio airwave side of things on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. So this is one of those few opportunities that I have to really enjoy, not that I don't enjoy the show, but this was a game that will allow me to enjoy recording the post-game show. I'm going to let it be known right here, I have very few critiques of this game in terms of anything that would be deemed negative. I have very few analytical talking points of this game being a bad one for the Buffalo Bills. It's one of the best Bills games that I have seen in a long, long time. And I want to remind you guys that you can subscribe to the show and like the show on YouTube and Facebook if you haven't already. Hopping on here to dive into this game between the Buffalo Bills and Seattle Seahawks. This morning, I gave a real good analysis, I would say, on just how I thought the Bills could win this game. I really believed that they could win this game. I talked to a lot of people about it throughout the week, and they all told me, I think you're living in a fantasy land. They thought I was living in a fantasy land. Well, I'm not living in a fantasy land now. The Buffalo Bills are 7-2 for the first time since 1993, and they're inching closer to their first AFC East division title since 1995. And the unprecedented success that we have seen for the Buffalo Bills franchise these last 3-4 seasons in the Sean McDermott era, there has been a few, shall I say, signature wins. Signature wins meaning wins that really stand out and really start somewhat that next phase of our progression, that next phase of our franchise to take that next big step. And I think this was one of those games. This was one of those games where I'm hoping that this is one of those games where we can really start to see the Buffalo Bills learn from their victory and kind of build on their victory into the next week. This next opponent that we have ahead of us, the Arizona Cardinals, they're also a tough task to play up against. So let's get right to it. This is the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Bills post-game show. The Buffalo Bills torch the Seattle Seahawks 44-33. There was some garbage points. They did let Seattle creep back into it a little bit, but it was too little too late for Seattle. For the first time since 1993, the Bills are 7-2, and as I mentioned, move one step closer towards capturing their first AFC East title since 1995. And addressing the most important position in the game, and saying it loud and clear for the folks at home, Air Allen is back. Josh Allen, 31 of 38, 415 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, zero interceptions, and 1 rushing touchdown, a total of 4 touchdowns in this game. What a performance from Josh Allen in this game. This was, in my opinion, arguably his best effort as the Buffalo Bills quarterback throughout these last 3 seasons. Josh Allen has had a lot of great games this year, but we were cutting the season somewhat in half due to the fact that the first 4 weeks Allen had success. Saw a lot of success those first 4 weeks. These last 4 weeks, not so much. For Allen to return in this way, for Allen to return as Air Allen. To talk about the Thomas takeaways now, I don't want to get too ahead of myself in the show, but this was unexpected. I mean, this was unexpected. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to be sitting here right now and talking about Josh Allen's revival taking place against the Seattle Seahawks. I know the Seahawks have a little bit of a shaky secondary. I know that, the Seattle Seahawks aren't the defense that they were, in the Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas days. But to see Allen not just play well, but to see Josh Allen dominate, picking apart this defense for the majority of this game, Allen against the Seattle Seahawks had, 2-3 incompletions. Those 7 incomplete passes that he had, making him 31 of 38, those were towards the end of the game. And for Buffalo to come out just guns blazing, just ripping, letting it rip early and often, and the Seattle Seahawks couldn't stop it. Buffalo didn't have to deviate from that game plan essentially the entire game. And, a lot of guys reaped the reward of that as well outside of Allen. Stephon Diggs in this one, 9 catches, 118 yards on 12 targets. I like to illustrate the targets and paint the picture of the targets for you due to the fact that Diggs was able to put himself in position to get open. Not only that, a lot of the catches that Diggs had today, he was getting yards after catch. And this was a great show. This was a greatest show on turf, greatest show in Buffalo performance from the Buffalo Bills. Their offense was cooking. Their offense was moving the chains. And it goes back to what I said this morning. I think I did hit the nail on the head with this take, is that Josh Allen was playing a little bit of the falling victim, I should say, to the hero ball mindset. He was not taking what the defense was giving him, wasn't throwing it over the middle in terms of dinking and dunking and moving the chains. I thought Allen did that and then some in today's game, and I think that's why we saw Allen perform at the level that he did today. I'd compare it to, in a boxing match, the boxer has to throw a jab, has to throw, establish the jab, and then start to throw the haymakers as the fight, rages on. And Allen was trying to throw those haymakers early in some of these games, these last few weeks, where in this game, he was trying to establish the jab, go to the body, then the head, and stick and move, so to speak, to take a boxing term, to take a combat sports term. That's what Allen did today. He was able to establish his short, intermediate passing game, which I would consider the jab in terms of boxing and football. And then he was able to throw those haymakers in terms of the bigger routes, the longer routes, the stretch plays. And obviously the dynamic athlete that Allen is consistently poses a threat. And today, Allen posed a threat in terms of extending the play, I should say, only to throw the football. And I really enjoyed seeing that, because oftentimes, when an athlete at quarterback knows that he can run and move in the pocket the way that Josh Allen can, he sometimes falls too in love with running, sometimes falls too in love with making plays all on his own. Josh Allen simply was patient today, allowed everything to kind of come to him, and I expected that to happen in the near future. Did I expect it to happen at this high of a success rate against the Seattle Seahawks, who are a very good team? I didn't, and I'm so thankful that I didn't, because that's what makes this show so much more exciting for me, to have to hop onto the mic, dive into this game, and say to myself, this was a very welcomed performance by the Buffalo Bills on all 3 phases of the game. I'm not just going to talk about I'm not going to talk about the offense today only. I'm going to talk about the defense as well. A key contributor to this team, and a guy that gets overlooked and doesn't get talked about nearly enough, is the health and return of Smoke John Brown. 8 catches, 99 yards. He had a big catch and run today, almost got it in for 6, but Allen getting it, 12 targets to Diggs, 11 targets to Brown. You really start to see what type of attack Josh Allen had in that stat line. 23 targets together combined for Diggs and Brown, and the fact that the lion's share of those targets were caught. The accuracy today of Allen, I thought, was on point. I mean, 31 of 38, the stat line registers that. You see that in the stat line. But if you watched the game, which most of you guys did, we saw touch on his passes today. We saw a quarterback that had anticipation. And I think this was a big, big game for Josh Allen's progress moving forward. Gabe Davis as well. What a find he has been for this Buffalo Bills team. 4 catches, 70 yards. He did get the touchdown early in the game. And today, I mean, there is plenty of room to throw praise. There really is. The Buffalo Bills came out in this game with an early 14-0 lead in the first quarter. Things got a little bit tighter in the second and third. That third quarter, for whatever reason, continues to plague the Buffalo Bills. But I'm going to accept this win for what it is. I'm going to accept this win as 7-2 for the first time since 1993. And the run game, I wanted the run game to be established today, but the passing game was so hot for the Buffalo Bills today. How could you not appreciate what the Bills were able to do today? So those of you that are commenting, I will get to your comments. I always do. I want to just dive into the top 5. Ryan Thomas, takeaways of the game. Josh Allen did get back to basics. He took what the defense gave him. I talked about that a little bit. I won't repeat myself in that regard, but you guys know what I mean. Those games where he somewhat faltered a little bit, I think he kind of got lost in trying to do a little bit too much, where this game he was patient, took what the defense gave him, and made the most of it. The Bills set the tone early in this game, forced Seattle to play from behind early on, forcing a team like the Seattle Seahawks to play from behind. I don't know if there's any team that the Seahawks have played this season that have forced the Seahawks to play from behind. The fact that the Bills were able to accomplish that feat was really a win in and of itself, and that's what allowed the Bills to somewhat have this ease of a victory. I mean, I look at the first half in particular, and you see how urgent the Bills were on offense to really establish something early, jumping out to a 14-point lead, and then in the fourth quarter, kind of blowing things open once again. This was just such a complete offensive effort. I mean, Isaiah McKenzie had the first touchdown today. Tyler Kroft had the second touchdown today, and we saw Gabe Davis have touchdowns today. The fact that Allen was able to get the target share mostly to Diggs and Brown, and yet Davis, McKenzie, and Kroft had one catch, and it was the touchdown. But the fact that Davis, McKenzie, and Kroft were the 3 players that had the touchdowns receiving-wise in today's game, I think that shows you that this Bills offense is far deeper than what you thought or what I thought. The fact that Allen was able to move the chains with the obvious guys, Diggs, Brown, but was able to get in the end zone to Davis, Kroft, and McKenzie. That just goes to show you that this Bills offense is very deep. And the fact that the Bills were able to put up points on the board with, some of those, I don't want to say lower end, but some of the guys that aren't the obvious contributors, some of the guys that don't have the flashy names of the Stephon Diggs, the world, the John Browns of the world, making things happen. Cole Beasley had, I think, one of the best catches I've seen a receiver have in a long, long time. Josh Allen's rolling out to the right, fires it towards the right sideline. It was a little bit behind. Cole Beasley had to come back for it, and he trapped the ball. I mean, I can't get enough of just this wide receiver core. And that Allen is improving. But to know that Allen is improving with a highly skilled wide receiver core, it's only going to make him better quicker. And I think that's what we're actually seeing out there. I have to heap a ton of praise on a Buffalo Bills player today that he got a lot of crap. I mean, I'm on Bills Twitter almost every day. I'm on Bills Facebook pages almost every day. And there's one player on this Buffalo Bills team that got a ton of crap, ton of hate from Bills Mafia. And I thought, too little too soon, Bills Mafia. It's week 8, week 9. We're I'm going back to last week, but heading into week 9. Let's let this season finish, and let's see if this guy can't be a key contributor throughout the rest of the season. And that is none other than Bills linebacker A.J. Klein. This was A.J. Klein's best game as a Buffalo Bill, and you have to put it into perspective. This was Matt Milano's, sixth, seventh game that he wasn't playing, and A.J. Klein was able to fill that role extremely well. I say that I have 5 takeaways from this game, but I actually have 6 takeaways from this game, and I think that the last one will be one that people definitely will enjoy. But A.J. Klein was a player that the Bills brought in this offseason that I really liked, from Carolina, New Orleans, the type of smarts that a player like A.J. Klein has within Sean McDermott's scheme, understanding Sean McDermott's scheme and knowing that role as the outside linebacker on that defense. I thought that Klein would make more of an immediate impact sooner rather than later. Dating back to the beginning of the season, I thought it was actually one of the more sound moves that the Bills made this offseason, so much so that I took to Twitter right away when I heard the news, and the Bills picked up the tweet, and my Twitter was on the Bills. My tweet was on the Bills social media networks and videos and stuff. That was really cool. And then I'm thinking, man, A.J. Klein, he's not fitting the bill, so to speak, and he's not achieving what I thought he would. Well, today, I mean, for there to be any game for A.J. Klein to show up and to make an impact, for it to be this game against a team that all the experts, all the media, all the analysts didn't think that the Bills would win this game. They didn't think they had a shot in hell of winning this game. And A.J. Klein was flying all over the field. He sacked Russell Wilson, forced a fumble, recovered the fumble. I mean, that guy deserves a lot of credit, and he deserves a lot of credit, not just from his teammates and coaches, which are obviously going to give it to him, but he deserves credit from the Buffalo Bills Mafia, from the Bills Mafia, Bills fans everywhere, Bills Nation, whatever you want to call it. This was his best game, and the fact that he stepped up under these circumstances, I think, shows a ton of fortitude in terms of seizing the opportunity. This game was a massive opportunity for this team, and the fact that they were able to seize the moment, relish the opportunity, and take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and win this game really shows the character that this team has, and really shows the character of our coach, Sean McDermott. The front seven of the Buffalo Bills created consistent pressure. It's something that we hadn't seen really consistently all season long. Kind of goes back to what I said on the flip side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, the Bills' run game couldn't get established. Well, the defense had trouble pressuring the quarterback as well. The fact that they could pressure Russell Wilson, the fact that they could force Russell Wilson to make that first read and not have that first read be there. I talked about that this morning, and I kind of hit the nail on the head with that one too, that if you force Russell Wilson out of the pocket, you better have somebody there to bring him down, or have a hand in his face, or have someone in his general vicinity. The Bills did that, and I really enjoyed watching guys like Jerry Hughes make that impact. I thought Ed Oliver was a disruptor. We didn't see, a big sack from Ed Oliver or anything like that, but we saw disruption. And that's what the Bills have needed to get back to really all season long. And the fact that they were able to accomplish that, Russell Wilson had a great stat line day in terms of yards, but they're playing from behind virtually the entire game. Buffalo holding the Seattle Seahawks to 48 rushing yards among the running backs on this team. DJ Dallas had 7 carries for 31 yards. Travis Homer had 6 carries for 16 yards. DK Metcalf, extremely tough to stop. There's no doubt about that. He is probably one of the best receivers in this league. We knew that he would feast in his own way. 7 catches, 9 targets, 108 yards, and a touchdown. That was expected for me. David Moore had a big touchdown today, but 4 catches, 71 yards. Outside of that big touchdown, really Travis Homer and Jacob Hollister were the players to read about on the stat sheet. Tyler Lockett didn't do hardly much at all. 4 catches, 40 yards. So this defense really showed up in this one, and this was a welcome back, thank you Jesus performance by the Bills defense, because for the last few weeks, let's face it, this Bills defense has looked rough. The fact that they were able to put it together and make something happen against a really tough team in the Seattle Seahawks, I can't state it enough how happy I am for this win. and relishing this opportunity and seizing the moment. So the number five Thomas takeaway of today's game, of the day, of the game today, is the coronation of Josh Allen. I don't want to hear this anymore. And what I mean by hear this, I mean hear specifically that Josh Allen is not the guy, or that Josh Allen has a long way to go, and that Josh Allen is this, Josh Allen is that. Like, he's not who we think he is. He's not the guy. I've heard a lot of pessimistic takes in regards to Josh Allen the last 3 years, and each year those takes become less and less. I mean, the amount of those takes become less and less and less each year. Rookie year, a lot of naysayers. Sophomore season, we could say, not as many naysayers. Third season this year, not as many naysayers as there was last year. But the fact that they're still out there blows my mind. I don't get it. I understand that Allen's first 4 weeks were better than his last 4 weeks, better than anybody, to be honest. But in studying each game and looking at the tape and looking at the stats especially, you see that. That's an obvious statement. But what is also an obvious statement is that, as I've mentioned already, this is Allen's third season. This is not his 15th season. This is not his 10th season. This is not his 5th season. And I've said this from the start. Josh Allen will be better in his 4th and 5th season. Year 5 and beyond, this guy will be one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. I would take that to my grave, that Josh Allen will be one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League from year 5 on. The only thing that is in the way of Josh Allen is experience. Once he has more experience, once he is gelled consistently with this offense, with a lot of these new weapons, and we're already seeing success out of Josh Allen. How could anyone doubt Josh Allen this year in particular when we have seen success from Josh Allen through the first 4 weeks with a lot of new weapons? Anytime a quarterback can thrive with new weapons, you have to say to yourself, this guy is pretty damn good. This was his best game, in my opinion, as a starting quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. And a key, factotum, I guess you could say, of the game is that Josh Allen is the first quarterback in the Super Bowl era with 400-plus passing yards, 3+ pass touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a 130-plus passer rating in multiple games in a season. You want to know the other names? You want to hear the other names that are attached to that key fact, to that statistic or record, I guess you could say, whatever you want to call it. Call it what you will. Josh Allen is among excellence within this fact. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Pat Mahomes are the only other players with multiple such games in their careers of having, as I said, 400-plus passing yards, 3+ passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a 130-plus passer rating in multiple games in a season. I guarantee you, even the great Tom Brady, even the great Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen definitely did that sooner than Aaron Rodgers, because Rodgers was on the bench for 4 years, 4 years, playing behind Brett Favre. Josh Allen was thrown into the line of fire year 1, week 1, when the Bills inexplicably decided to start Nathan Peterman. I was standing field side during training camp, during Allen's rookie season, telling anyone I could, anyone and my grandma, that Josh Allen's the best player on this Bills offense, including LaShawn McCoy. People looked at me like I was crazy. You're seeing it now. You saw it today. You know it. You know it. And I'm not talking about Bills Mafia here. Now I'm kind of shifting gears to the rest of the National Football League. Not only does Josh Allen have a chip on his shoulder, I have a chip on my shoulder for anti-Josh Allen takes, because they don't see what I see. They don't see what I've seen, and they don't see what I see week in, week out. They don't follow the team like Bills Mafia does, like I do, like you do. What I mean by they are the NFL, the NFL nation that doesn't see the things that I see in Josh Allen's game. Even when Josh Allen has struggled, I have seen positives. I have had positive takeaways from Josh Allen's struggles. The guy is a natural born leader. He is a true franchise quarterback. There is no debating that. And anyone that's willing to debate that with me, it's almost a waste of time based on the results and the success that we have seen from Josh Allen. So key number 6 to today's game, the biggest Thomas takeaway, I should say. See, I'm on the morning show angle. But to me, this defense was successful. And, this is just a shot in the dark take here, but I think that Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier for this particular game, based on what I heard from McDermott in the media, I think Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier came together and formed a game plan towards this Seattle Seahawks offense, because with Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, even without Chris Carson, the Seattle Seahawks have a potent offense. And if the Bills' defensive weeks past showed up against this offense, we would have been in trouble early. But McDermott and Frazier, I think, really checked the tape and really looked and found out what was going on and decided to change it by creating more pressure, by providing better coverage in particular matchups. I thought the coverage today was really, really good. Moments where the Bills were unable to get that pressure on Russell Wilson, it almost didn't even matter because the coverage was so much better that Russell Wilson couldn't throw it right away, and then maybe he would get sacked or maybe it would be an incomplete pass. I thought the defense was just fully sound and their minds were fully cleared as what the task at hand was. And that was my 6th Thomas takeaway. So let's get to some of the comments here. Michael Geray says, straight A style victory. Andre Roberts and Josh Allen set the tone. What do you think, Ryan? Let's go. It's tough to say a return guy sets the tone anymore, just for me, just based on the rule changes that have been made in the NFL to kind of take away the return game from the National Football League's, return specialists. I think Roberts set the tone early on the first kickoff return. And then we kind of saw the offense pick up the football and kind of move it down the field after that. So I can kind of see your take there. But as you said, straight A style victory. I can't see anything wrong with this win. Michael Trask says, do you think our defense is turning the corner? I mean, one would like to think so after this effort, Michael. I would like to think that this defense has turned the corner and that we have seen the positive side of this defense really take shape. And I think this defense had their heads in the clouds a little bit these last few weeks. I think this defense finally understands who they are and why they are who they are and what makes them what they are. In a team sport like football, the biggest thing for me, and I say this to kids, I say this all the time just in conversation, kids that play football, you have to have an identity. You have to have an identity as a player. You have to have an identity as a coach, and you have to ultimately have an identity as a team. You have to have an identity on offense. You have to have an identity on defense, and that identity has to be molded together to have one common vision. And the Bills' defense today showed that they had a common vision against the Seattle Seahawks, and we saw that play itself out. They played with an edge today. They played with a purpose today. They wanted to set the tone early. They did that. They simply showed up, Michael. They simply showed up. And I'm not saying they didn't show up in other weeks, but the true Bills defense showed up today. I can't say that for previous weeks. Somewhere along the way, something just wasn't quite right, and they just weren't quite there. They were there today. They did make the impact that they are meant to make. I mean, this team, in my opinion, I've said this all season long, but going into this season, and I'll say it now at 7-2, on the precipice of their first AFC EAST title since 1995, regardless of how crummy the rest of the AFC EAST might be. It was crummy when New England was on top, wasn't it? So I don't want to hear that either from the AFC EAST fans out there of the Jets, the Dolphins, the Patriots. Call them baloney on that one. But this team is much better than the way they've played. Coming off of this game, they played like a 7-2 team, where previous wins, they looked like it was just a drop in the bucket. This was just dumping, overflowing a bucket with, positive vibes and a positive mindset, if that makes sense. Kind of a weird analogy there, but you kind of get my point, that this was as legitimate a win that they have had in a long, long time. And I think that at this point, this was the best moment for the Bills to win this particular game. It was like the perfect flow leading up to ultimately this result. So in a way, it's like I wish we beat the Titans. I wish we beat the Chiefs. But the fact that it happened in this order, it almost sets the tone for the identity creation of the 2020 Buffalo Bills. Pretty deep stuff, right? So let's get to some other comments here. Folks, my name is Ryan Thomas. Thanks so much for tuning into the Thomas Take Sports podcast. I greatly appreciate that. This is the Buffalo Bills post-game show. Let's see here. Wayne Crump says, I think we are finally in sync. Go Buffalo Bills. I would agree. I'm hoping that they can carry this on to the following week. And, Arizona's tough. They're tough too. Kyler Murray is an electrifying, dynamic quarterback. And DeAndre Hopkins is one of the better receivers in the league. So it's a task and a tough task. So let's take it 1 week at a time. David Reed, defense is slowly getting it together. Any update on Trey? I had a message on Trey White. Let me see if I can find it here. My phone was getting blown up earlier today, so let me see if I can. Let me see if I can find it here. He was questionable during the game with an ankle injury. For those of you that didn't see that or missed that somehow, I happen to believe that he will be okay heading into next week. He wasn't wearing an ankle brace or a cast or anything like that. I think he just rolled over his foot kind of funny. Probably a mild ankle sprain. I think banged up Bills. Kyle Trimble, he's a good buddy of mine. He has his own injury analysis site. I'll be talking to him in the near future. He can kind of pick and see what injury could have been had there, could have been created there. But I think we'll see Trey White next week for sure. Maybe not. Sometimes players like to hold guys out 1 week prior to the bye, but I think he'll be out there for the Bills. David Reed also says, don't say Klein, he was unblocked. I'm not talking about one play, David. I'm not referring to one play from A.J. Klein. I'm referring to the entire game. I thought he was in position a lot of the time to make tackles towards the sideline. I thought he set the edge. He set the edge on the outside, and he had a tough time doing that leading up to this game. So I'm not talking about one play. Let's see here. Louis Sonato, great defensive game plan by Leslie Frazier. Also, offensively speaking, we opened it up and never looked back. TY, I think he means thank you there. Thank you, Louis, for the comment. Yeah, I think, Leslie Frazier was kind of, feeling the pressure in this one leading up to this game. And the fact that the Bills showed up and, really enacted his game plan. Big ups to Leslie Frazier and McDermott for setting the tone defensively in this one. And let's see here. Jason says, the Bills played aggressive and hungry today. Yes, they might give up yards and some points, but they got after it and forced turnovers. And I mean, forcing turnovers, you started to see the defense become more confident. You started to see the defense smiling, celebrating. They had a day today. I mean, the defense really had a day today to, host the Seahawks, host the quintessential, prior to this game, MVP candidate that everybody's talking about, Russell Wilson. He didn't look like an MVP today. I tell you that. Marianne says, sometimes you have to hit the rock bottom. Not that they did, but defense did need to really kick it in, I believe she's saying there. I think some jobs might have been on the line. Just saying, go Bills, watching it since 1967. That's a true fan right there. A little bit before my time. But, yeah, I definitely believe that this was an awesome, complete effort from the Buffalo Bills today. There is not much to say negatively in regards to this game. And, I think that Josh Allen is firing on all cylinders. I really think that we are about to see the next phase of a hot streak from Josh Allen. He looked fantastic to me today. I think this was his best game as a Buffalo Bill, and I think that the hate for Allen needs to be minimized, especially amongst Bills Mafia. People are entitled to their opinions, but you got to put out an opinion that's warranted and reasonable. And some of these opinions that I've seen on Allen these last 4 weeks, I'm just not seeing that. I'm not seeing a bust. I'm not seeing a guy that doesn't have the talent or doesn't have the tools. I saw a guy that was overcompensating, and I think that could have been because of his shoulder injury, and I think that could have been because he didn't have his right-hand man, John Brown, out there. And I've talked about that. John Brown and Josh Allen are like spaghetti and meatballs, man. They're a good combo. So we'll see what happens this upcoming week against the Arizona Cardinals. But rest assured, I will be back on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast this Wednesday to talk about some fantasy football stuff for the fantasy football fans out there, fanatics out there, as well. Sunday's show, the pregame show Sunday morning, usually at 11, and then the postgame show usually Sunday night. Kind of an earlier edition of the postgame show this week due to the fact that the game was at 1, and I was relatively home early this time, so I was able to get this out early. So I really appreciate everybody that's tuning in. And as I said, I'm growing this show ever so surely, and it's not a slow growth. It's been a steady, rock steady growth of this show. And I only have you guys to thank as far as Bills Mafia for that, and letting you guys know that my podcast is available on all platforms, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Podcasting platforms are extremely, extremely massive. People are driving to work. They're not listening to the radio anymore. They're listening to podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Sirius XM, ESPN Radio. I mean, they're listening to these shows in a wide variety of ways. The fact that I can get my show out there in a wide variety of networks, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, as well as subscribing to my YouTube channel and liking my Facebook page. Doing that gets you guys instant access to any time I go live. So as soon as I click go live, you guys will get a notification that I'm live, and you can tune in right away, ask me questions right away, get on a little bit sooner rather than later, seeing it on your news feed or whatnot. It's just kind of one of the things I've noticed along the way of recording and creating this show and producing it and putting it out there. So any other comments that we have as well, I will get to. Let's see here. Should Sean McDermott have thrown the flag on the Gabriel Davis touchdown? That is interesting because Sean McDermott typically doesn't throw the flag. If they feel like it's a conclusive result to a play, he kind of just lets it go. And if it was me on the sideline, I would have thrown that flag. I would have thrown that challenge flag. I thought that he was still in bounds and he had the ball over the pylon. Brent, I thought that he was going to challenge that one, and the fact that he didn't, I was like, that was. But they won, and I can't complain about any facet of this game. To me, this was an extremely important moment in this phase of the franchise moving forward. I mean, this was a real big win. I don't think I could state it enough. I think this was the biggest win for this team all season long, especially given the moment of this game and the moment that this season, heading into week 9, where the Bills were at. A lot of people looked at the Bills as a floundering team heading into this matchup and a team that wasn't prepared or able to be prepared for this game against the Seahawks. They were prepared. Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, and yes, Brian Dable deserve a ton of credit for this win, in my opinion. So there you have it. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe and go Bills. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast.